Spotlight with Shadow, a Canadian dad who's got his finger on the pulse of global entertainment and sports. Each episode features unfiltered conversations with everyday creatives, musicians, wrestlers, filmmakers, and more from every corner of the globe. No fluff, just raw, real stories. This is Spotlight with Shadow, presented by Off the Top Media.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Spotlight with Shadow. This is the season finale. I am joined by a man that doesn't need to be introduced, but he is a legendary WWE referee. He is a great podcaster himself, and he is always trolling you guys on the internet because that's what he loves to do these days. Hello, Jimmy. How are you?
I'm doing good, Shadow. How you doing, man? Thanks for having me on, man.
Hey, I'm glad we could figure out the time and make this work. You're a busy man to get a hold of, and traveling the world with your lovely wife and doing things and having fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she gets to travel with me for once. She actually never wanted to come on a road trip ever. She's not a wrestling fan at all. She doesn't understand why I like it so much. But the funny thing is, she finally came with me. I went to Philly this year for WrestleMania, and I convinced her to come. I said, we'll take a drive down. We'll take our time. It's only like, 7.5 hours driving? That ain't bad.
Yeah,
we could stop along the way, whatever. She had the time of her life. I took her to the reading terminal market. We ran the rocky steps. We did all the touristy crap, you know what I mean? And then I got to hang out with a bunch of old friends, and it was a blast. And she saw how happy I was, but I saw how she said, I don't know why I didn't go with you earlier. I said, because before I would have been working. I wasn't a working trip. You know what I mean? So,
right.
Yeah.
So you're a longtime vet in this business, but I want to talk a little before that. What got you interested in pro wrestling? What got you to where you got to work with the WWF at the time, and other adventures?
Well, I was a big wrestling fan growing up here in Toronto. We had wrestling all day long on Saturdays. It was like trying to get me to go play outside. Forget about it. We had, we had Maple Leaf Wrestling, of course, which was, iconic here in Ontario, especially. We used to get international wrestling from Montreal. We had Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling from one of the Buffalo affiliates. We had WWF from one of the other Buffalo affiliates. We'd get Stampede Wrestling on the Barrie station. We'd get you know what I mean? AWA aired here. It was so much wrestling. And all day long, I watched wrestling. I just fell in love with it. And when I was old enough to go on my own, I would drive down to Maple Leaf Gardens, and I got what was the equivalent of season's tickets. I don't know if you guys remember. You might be too young for it. They used to have that ramp, that iconic ramp. They used to go from the dressing room to the ring. I used to sit second row right beside that ramp, and I'd take pictures. I had a camera. It was one of my hobbies back in the day. I would take pictures of the boys when they were entering and exiting the ring, and I'd come back to the next show. There used to be a place when you actually had to develop your film instead of putting it on a little flash drive or whatever, called direct film, and they'd double your prints for $1. So what I would do is I'd get the second set of prints. I'd keep a set for myself as a souvenir, but I'd go to the next show and sell them. And then somebody who worked for Jack Tunney by the name of Elio Zarlinga caught me selling the pictures, and he was like, "You can't do this." I'm saying, "What are you talking about?" He says, "It's illegal." It's like he's telling me all these copyright laws, and I'm going, me in my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to lose these season's tickets. That's what I'm worried about now. And he says, "Well, you know what? You don't seem like a bad guy. You take pretty good pictures. Let me see if I can get Jack to bring you on board." And he used to take the pictures for the program. He was the photographer there, bring you on as my assistant and stuff like that. I met Jack, and Jack said, "Well, we don't need another photographer, but you know what? We'll find something for the kid to do." And I got on as kind of like the gopher, pretty much. That's how I started. That's how I got my foot in the door.
So you got your foot in the door by being a lackey, for better terms.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you get to doing reffing? Is it just one day that he asked you to start reffing for him? Or because I don't believe I've ever heard any stories where you were a wrestler yourself.
No, I wasn't a wrestler. And I didn't enter the business knowing what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to be a part of it in some form or fashion. So after about a year and a bit of doing all, Jack handing me the keys to his Cadillac and going, go up to the airport and pick up Andre the Giant and Timmy White at the Marriott, or go pick up Hogan, or go pick up Savage. And I'm going, like, I don't know what the language parameters are here.
Oh, you can say whatever you need to say.
I was like, holy shit. In my mind, I'm going, holy shit, I'm going to go pick up Andre the Giant. But, you have to, yes, sir, I'm on my way. You know what I mean? And I got to know Pat Patterson very well. And after about, like I said, a year and a bit, he says, Jack, we got the kid here. He's running all these errands for us. During the show, he's sitting around waiting for the show to end so he could run some more errands. Why don't we use him? Why don't we make him a referee? And Jack said, but do you want to smarten the kid up? And Pat says, Jack, he's in the locker room with all the boys hanging out. He kind of knows what's going on. So you know what? Well, he goes to me, get yourself black shoes, black pants, a blue shirt, and a black bow tie, carry it with you all the time. So I did. And then there was a house show in Newmarket, Ontario. Chief Jay Strongbow was the lead agent that day. And he says, Jimmy, you got your ref gear with you? I said, yes, Chief, I do. He says, well, put it on. You're reffing tonight. You're reffing SD Jones versus the Red Demon, who is Jose Luis Rivera. And I went, okay, what am I supposed to say? I've never reffed a match before. So I went up to SD and I said, who was, at the time, we got along really well. I said, SD, I got some good news and some bad news. He says, really? I said, what's the good news? I said, I'm reffing your match tonight. He says, oh, cool. What's the bad news? I said, I'm reffing your match tonight. I have no idea what to do. So he basically just said, stick close to me. I'll talk you through it. And he talked me through the match. And that's when he kind of sat me down and said, now you got to go talk to the guys, talk to the other refs, talk to the veterans, talk to the boys, figure out how you're going to do this. And whatever you do, don't ever think you know everything. Be a sponge and always learn. And that was my first time stepping in the ring as a ref.
Wow. And then you fast forward, I think it's a few years, and in '87 you joined WWF. How do you go from Maple Leafs promotion to WWF? Is that a connection for Pat?
No, it was actually at the time this happened, they were already a part of WWF. They had already absorbed the Maple Leaf Wrestling office. So it was technically, I did start, my first match was with WWF.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So from there, it became, I was working pretty much the Ontario circuit in Canada, Eastern Canada, and that sort of stuff. And anything close to that was upstate New York, but I never working TV. And then Jack at the time was driving to any TVs that were drivable for him. He hated flying. So anything that was within like an 8-9 hour drive, he drove. And then Billy Red Lyons used to drive with him, and Jack had some kind of eye problems and he couldn't see. And Red used to drive, and then he had to have some cataract surgery or something. He pulled me aside. He said, hey, do you mind driving Red and I to the TVs this weekend and stuff like that? And I said, sure. He said, okay, just bring your ref gear with you because you never know. Always have it in your car, So I said, okay, I'm bringing it. I brought it with me, and it eventually led to me getting to referee on TV. And first TV I worked was in Albany, New York, where they used to film 3 weeks worth of television in one night. And they did Superstars that night. And on the third week of taping, where I got to take my first bump on television, which was the one-man gang giving me the 747 and getting fined $10,000 by President Jack Knight.
So you're a young kid. You start out taking pictures. You get into the reffing biz, and you're working for WWF. But I'm assuming you're still very certainly young at this point, meeting these huger-than-life characters like Andre and Hogan and whoever else it might be. Mm-hmm. Did it ever strike you as I don't like using the term because it's not really proper, but like a marking out moment?
No, absolutely marked out. Are you kidding me? These are the guys that, I was taking pictures of. You know what I mean? And now I'm actually in the car with them, and they're having conversations with me. Hey, how's it going? Andre with that big voice, Jimbo, how's it doing? What are you doing? Hey, boss, how are you? Everybody calls him boss, and I'm having conversations with these guys, and I'm sitting back going, okay, I've been watching these guys on TV, but they're actually like you and me. They're normal people, it's kind of weird.
Right. I mean, that is obviously awesome, though. I mean, I've gotten to meet, like back when I was a younger guy, when WWF was coming around Toronto a lot. I got to meet like Taker and stuff back in the early days and stuff like that. And I didn't really appreciate it then. And then as I'm older now and watching my kids meet these wrestlers when we get an opportunity, like my daughter got to meet Becky Lynch, and she was just like, oh my God. And then my oldest son got to meet Rhea, and he was like just starstruck. And I'm like, and she was so calm and polite to both of them. It was just great experience. And I'm just imagining what it's like being a young kid working in the business, being able to meet these guys and them treating you like a peer.
It was cool because, back in those days, when they were in public and they interacted with the fans, they kind of stayed in character. Like you mentioned meeting Undertaker. Undertaker was very much like that. Outside of the locker room, he was very much the Undertaker. Even though he wasn't dressed in black and walking around in this scary mode, he still kind of kept that persona a little bit. You know what I mean? He kept it a little guarded. Whereas nowadays, everybody's just wide open. Well, aside from a few that still go by the old mantra, if you're a heel, I'll be a heel to you.
Yeah, I think in modern wrestling, and it's hard to see the kayfabe because a lot of people are what they like to be called as smart marks now, and they think they know everything.
Right.
And I mean, one character that comes to mind when you say they like to keep the kayfabe heel is MJF.
Right.
I mean, I've seen him take pictures with kids, and he's just flipping them off, and he's being that heel like he's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm looking at, and I hate saying this because I grew up loving Taker, but like his whole stuff now is making me question a lot because like he guarded this character for 30 years, and now he's just exposing everything, and it's like, why?
Yeah. Now he's Mark Calloway. Yeah.
Yeah, which I appreciate. I mean, it's his story to tell, and I get it. But it's like, as someone growing up watching him and him being so guarded with that character, and then just exposing Taker as he is weird to me.
Absolutely. No, that's very understandable. It isn't. I get it completely.
So I want to get into a topic now that is a long talked about conversation over the years. That there's no footage to the public. You had the unfortunate being in the ring when Mr. Owen Hart passed away. What was? I don't want to ask what it was like because that's not how I mean it. But what was it like being in that moment? I guess in time.
It's still hard to describe. I've been asked this before. It's tough to put into words exactly because being there and being so close to the situation, it was a very difficult time for me because I went through a gambit of emotions. I went from shock because when I saw him there in the ring, face up, looking up, and I called out a couple of times and no response. I panicked because I didn't put two and two together at the time. You know what I mean? Because I knew he was supposed to descend, and right before that there was a hardcore match in the ring, and I went out there and helped the crew clear some of the debris from the ring, like broken tables and stuff like that, and just kicking stuff out of the ring and whatever. And I was moving towards that corner, and as I was moving towards that corner, I had my hand on the top rope, right, just making my way across. And on the screen was the interview he did pre-taped with as the Blue Blazer with Kevin Kelly. So I'm kind of half watching that, half kicking the stuff out, and I heard a scream. And you're in an arena with 16,000 people. So again, I'm just thinking somebody's screaming, whatever. And in an instant, I felt something brush by me, like right by my right side. And at the same time, the top rope snapped out of my hand and jammed back into my fingers. And I'm wondering what the hell just happened here. Did the top rope snap? And I looked down and, excuse me, he was there. And I called out a few times and I got no response. So that's when I panicked and I started screaming for help. And everybody started flooding into the ring, and I just stood back and just, didn't want to do it. I didn't know, what I mean? I thought, just stay out of the way and let them do their job. And went back, they put him in the ambulance and took him away. And I was out back and I was really shaking. I didn't know what to do. So somebody handed me a cigarette. I was a smoker at the time, and they said, sit down and relax. Then they took me to get checked out because they figured I was going through a real trauma, for whatever reason. And I went and got checked out, and that's when I found out at the hospital that Owen had passed. And that's, again, I've freaked out again, called my wife and stuff. And again, after that, it's a blank. From the hospital in Kansas City, don't remember anything heading to St. Louis for the next night. I just it's a blur. It's not there. If I try to rack my brain all night long, I'll never remember. I don't remember if we drove, if we flew, if we took a crew bus, whatever the case. I don't know how we got there. And it
Yeah, I
wasn't
can
until
imagine that's hard.
yeah, and I didn't know how bad it was until I talked to Jerry Lawler King the next day. He sat me down. He says, I was struggling with whether I should tell you this, but I figured you needed to know that he saw the last 15, 20 feet of the fall while he was sitting behind the desk. And he said the first thing that popped into his head was, oh my God, he's going to land on Jimmy. And that's what I felt brushed by me was Owen's leg. And when he told me that, I fell to pieces again. It was just, it was just so overwhelming. And of course, JR was really good. He said, if you want to go home, we'll send you home right now. If you need to. And weirdly, I thought, as much as I do want to go home, I think I need to be here with everybody else. Because we're all going through this together. Everybody was, it was something that nobody had experienced before. So, and then I started going through a gambit of emotions again. Of course, the sadness and that stuff, but I started feeling guilty, if that makes any kind of sense, because
I think they call it survivor's guilt, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was starting to feel fortunate because I wasn't a different part of this tragedy, that I escaped unscathed. And, a family lost a father, a husband, a son, a grandson. You know what I mean? One of the nicest, genuine, best human beings you'd ever meet on the planet.
I've heard nothing but great stories about the Harts. My dad went to school with Brett and Owen out in Calgary.
Wow.
I personally don't like Brett, but that's a different subject. But when it comes to that, I do have to ask, because it is now 25 years later. When you look back, do you believe in your heart of hearts that it was the right call to continue that show?
No. I don't believe so.
Why did Vince do that, though? I don't understand. Maybe you have a little bit more insight.
Who knows what's going on through his mind? I guess he figured. I'm trying to think reasons why. I know, again, 16,000 people paid a ticket to go see a show, but at the same time, man just lost his life in your ring. You know what I mean? So, and then, from my understanding, because I wasn't there, he did tell the guys if they felt like not going on, not to. But I think the guys in their way was kind of like a tribute to him. They did it to honor Owen. And I know a lot of people might not understand that, but it's just how the guys were. They would do it to honor him.
Right. So I remember that time. I hadn't learned that Owen had passed. I know that WWF at the time was supposed to schedule. There was a barbecue up in Toronto that week. And I remember this because I was just a little kid, and I was supposed to meet Owen, and I was supposed to meet all the superstars. And it was all canceled, for obvious reasons. But I didn't know at the time. And then when my dad told me, I mean, I've never seen, because I wouldn't say they were like friends, but they knew of each other. But like my dad was rocked by that because I was someone he went to school with. And then that's kind of when it hit me that wrestling was more than just what I see on TV.
Yeah. And like you talked about, they're real people. They have, we forget sometimes we have that suspension of disbelief when we watch them on television. And sometimes we do watch it with too much of a critical eye, try to overanalyze everything. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be entertainment. It's what it's supposed to be. And we forget sometimes that they have real lives outside of it.
Do you? This might be an off question because it is left into interpretation. But do you think that AEW and Martha Hart are doing right by Owen's memory, or do you think that Martha maybe should now let the new regime of WWE put him in his rightful spot in the Hall of Fame?
I applaud them. No, I get what you're saying. I applaud them for doing that, for trying to honor the memory of Owen. I think Martha still has an axe to grind with WWE, regardless of whether Vince is there or not. It's just that's just how it's going to be with her, and that's it's not for me to say whether it's right or wrong. It would be nice though for him to get the flowers that he deserves, the recognition that he earned from the company where he really
literally sacrificed his life for.
Yeah, exactly. So, and not only that, showed the world how good he actually was, because God forbid, a lot of people say, and I know Brett might not like hearing this, that Owen was actually more talented in the ring than Brett was, because
Thank you.
he had okay, I'll put it this way. They can match each other move for move in the ring as far as that goes. But as far as personality and character go, Owen had it. Owen ticks all the boxes.
That was definitely that's my biggest argument when people ask me stuff and they'll go, oh, well, Bret Hart, and I go, no, it's Owen. Because had Owen got to be able to get to the WWE side of things, that character longevity would have went, because he could do what don't get me wrong, I appreciate what Bret has done in the ring. He's a very technical wrestler. He's great. Yeah. But he was very one-dimensional, where Owen had a wide range, in my opinion.
Right.
And we were just on the cusp of that with the Blue Blazer and what could have been. I don't know.
The beauty of Owen was he could do it all. He's kind of like, and I know people are going to say, you're going to compare him to Miz. Miz may not have the athletic ability of an Owen Hart, but as far as character goes, Miz is great. He can be a heel, he can be a babyface, he can be whatever you want him to be. Owen could be exactly the same thing. He could be the most lovable babyface in the world, and he can also be the most hated heel. People just want to see him get his ass kicked. The problem with Bret was, like you said, heel or babyface, there wasn't much of a difference between the heel and babyface Bret, if that makes sense.
No, there really wasn't.
I mean. Yeah.
Maybe just the way he actively aggressive in the ring or not, but other than that, it wasn't nothing too.
But like promo delivery and style, not a whole lot of difference.
So going forward after the tragedy, continuing into the following years, with WWF buying or WWE buying WCW and all that, and acquiring ECW over that time, what was that transition like for you in the back, and bringing in like other, I guess, referees as well? Like, I'm sure you guys have a network of yourselves, but what's that like for you? Still, are you worried about your job in that sense when all these new people are coming in? And
well, of course, it crosses everybody's mind, because you have people like veterans like a Nick Patrick. You have Charles Robinson at the time. I think Billy Silverman, I think, was one of the other ones. Mickey Henson came over. Eventually, Scott Armstrong. I mean, don't get me wrong, we had some great refs, but we had a lot of refs in WWE. Now we're thinking, now there's too many. Who's going to stay? Who's going to go? Are they going to incorporate everybody? And then they eventually decided to go with the brand split, which is, I think, for us a good idea, because they divided the referees and they made them brand specific. So Raw had their set of referees. SmackDown had theirs, as opposed to everybody working all shows. So that was, I guess that saved a lot of jobs for the refs. But as far as them absorbing WCW, everybody knows that basically they did it to absorb their video library and incorporate it into the WWE network, is basically why they did it. And they could, and then killed off that us versus them, WCW versus WWE feud.
I like to, I go back to this a lot, and a lot of people hate this argument, but you're seeing a lot of WCW-esque things with AEW. And I'm not trying to draw that comparison, because when AEW first started, it wasn't like that. But in the recent years, it's kind of developed that way. And you're seeing them bring in, well, again, happy everybody's being paid. You still need to utilize your roster.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of the old WCW days.
No, I know. I see that comparison. I just have a problem. Don't get me wrong. They've got a lot of talent there. The problem is they don't have someone who could steer the ship. And it's almost like a rudderless ship. It's all over the place. You have guys, okay, this week we're going to have so-and-so versus so-and-so in a banger of a match. So it's going to be a 5-star classic or whatever you want to say. But give me a reason for having this match other than, oh, these guys are really good. Tell me a story. And I know people say that, well, there's different flavors of ice cream everybody likes. Like Baskin Robbins has 31 flavors. But you know what? What are the biggest sellers of ice cream in Baskin Robbins, regardless of the 31 flavors? Chocolate and vanilla, black and white, heel, babyface, antagonist, protagonist. That's what's worked since day one in this business, and it still works today. If you want to make the comparison, which a lot of fans of AEW do, because every time you say something critical of them, they go, well, what about these guys over here in WWE? We're not talking about that right now. The whataboutism is not an argument. Just because it's done over there and you don't like it, how come you're liking it when it's done over here? That makes no sense. So they need to make sense of their storylines and stop blowing through them at rapid pace. Because the one misconception is they don't have stories. They do have stories, but they last 2 weeks. Who cares? You know what I mean? They blow through everything, and they try to cram so much into the limited TV time they have because they've got so many people on their roster that they're trying to put on television. It's almost like, come on, look, guys, some guys are going to have to sit out. Bottom line, you have Rampage, obviously, unfortunately, does bad numbers. Not many people are watching. Collision is not doing too well either, numbers-wise. But at the same time, you have these shows utilize talents on those shows. Maybe you'll get the numbers up. Who knows? And give us a reason to watch it.
Well, with Collision, it was specifically made for CM Punk, and then, well, we all know where that went. But
right,
I feel like they could let that show go and be okay. But I'm going to switch back to early on, Jimmy here. I don't think, because based on what you've told me so far, you didn't work Mania in Toronto in the 90s, right?
Oh, I did. Yeah, I did 6. Yeah, I did 6 and I did 18, both Manias here.
So how was that? Okay, since you did both, the first one to the second one, being a hometown boy, how does it feel to be standing in the middle of the Sky Dome? And I still call it that to this day. In the middle of the Sky Dome at one of the biggest Manias in Canadian hit. Well, I mean, it's only the only 2 we've ever had, but how does that feel?
No, not to sound like Captain Cliche, but it was incredible, man. You're in your hometown. You're in the Sky Dome where your Blue Jays play, where your Argos play. Everybody, they've even had a few hockey games. The Maple Leafs play in there a few times. So to be there in the middle of the ring, it's indescribable, man. It almost. Sometimes I almost forget, like, okay, I got a job to do. Stop looking at the crowd. You know what I mean?
Right. What match at 6 did you ref, and what at 18?
Oh, Jesus. What did I do at 18? I think I did the European Championship match at 18. I don't remember exactly who was in that one. Oh, my goodness. Because I was so... I remember for what everybody else remembers it. Hogan and Rock at 18.
I was there for that one, but I wasn't alive for the 91. So,
yeah, the Hogan and Rock one. I snuck out into the tech area so I could be out into the arena, into the actual stadium, to hear the crowd live instead of hearing it from behind.
Right.
And when I look behind me in the tech area, there's like 12 of the boys that snuck out there too to hear it. They want to hear the experience and feel it live. That's how amazing that moment was. And also. At 6, I know I did Snuka and Rick Rude. And I think
the 18 was DDP and Christian. I just looked that up quick.
Okay.
I'm just kind of looking up the match card for 6. I mean, that was a long time ago. So
yeah. But I think I did Snuka and Rick Rude at 6, and also Earthquake and Hercules Hernandez.
Yeah, I see that one. Yeah,
and I might have done one more. It's too many ref bumps. You know how it is.
that was a long card. 15 matches at 6.
Oh, I know. And that's why everybody had 3 matches going in. All 5 of us had 3 matches.
That's crazy. But like, I just love this. I just love hearing that you stood there, kind of taking it in, breathing in the air. That you were at home, at peace. Is that like a full circle moment for you, considering you start there, and that's like that's really the pinnacle, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And like sometimes you have to just calm yourself down. Yeah, sometimes you just have to calm yourself down and say, come on, no, okay, relax. This is the coolest thing in the world, but you got a job to do. Take it easy. You
Outside of WWE, you also refed at Ring of Honor once?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. Border Wars here in Toronto. They were coming up here for Border Wars and got a call one day from Kevin Kelly. He says, "Are you retired?" I said, "Yeah, pretty much." I said, "Why?" He says, "Well, we're coming up to Toronto. How do you feel about reffing a match at Border Wars?" I said, "Yeah, sure. What did you have in mind?" I said, "Yeah, I got Lance Storm versus Mike Bennett, and Lance maybe suggested you ref his match." I said, "Cool, I'm in." I'm not doing anything.
I'm going to go backwards a little bit here, not career wise, but we mentioned your wife. How did you guys meet? If she wasn't a wrestling fan, and I'm sure you're just a world traveler yourself, is she Canadian as well? Did you meet her on the road? Like, how did you guys meet? I got to hear this.
Oh no, she is. She's from northern Quebec, believe it or not, originally. And when she moved to Toronto, she became friends. She used to work in the banking industry, and a mutual friend of ours. There's this a girlfriend of hers was a friend of mine from school, and we knew each other. And she was trying to get my current wife Audra now to go out with me. Why don't you go out with Jim? He seems like a good guy, and you guys, I think you'd get along. And she's like, yeah, but he's that wrestling guy. He's a referee guy. I don't know about that. So yeah, so finally she talked her into it, and I took her to this swanky restaurant here in Toronto. It was in like top of one of the buildings downtown on Bay and Bloor or something like that. I forget the name of it, but it's one of those round deals where you can see out 360 and the whole bit. And I'm trying to impress her with this nice dinner. And while we're having dinner, this guy walks up. There's a table behind me with like 5 or 6 guys. I couldn't see them, but she saw them. And one of them walked over, and he goes over. He goes, and this freaked me out too because I wasn't used to this. He says, "Excuse me, I don't mean to bother you." But he goes, "But are you Jimmy Korderas?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh my God, I knew it. I was telling my buddies over there, and he's marking out for me." And I'm going, "Holy shit, what's going on here?" And she's looking, and she's going, "What?" And like he goes, "Hold on, can I ask you a few questions?" And he pulls up a chair and he sits down, and I'm like, what the heck is going on here? I'm like freaked out, and he's going, "Oh, so," and he's going on with all these questions, and I'm trying to be nice, and at the same time, I'm going, "Hey, dude, I don't mean to be rude, but like, I'm on my first date here with this young lady. I'm trying to impress her." He goes, "Oh, okay, I'll let it go. But can I ask you one more thing?" And I'm like, "Oh, jeez." So finally, he goes away, and I think that actually impressed her. She goes, "Oh, sorry," and actually, she figured, okay, maybe I'll give this guy a shot.
Just a random person just coming up and interrupting dinner. Like, yeah, let me get a bite of that breadstick you got there.
Yeah, good thing it wasn't Olive Garden and be there all night long.
Oh boy. So I know that you retired in 09, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And you don't have to talk about it, but what caused you to come off the road completely and sit down and be like, okay, I'm done?
Well, trying to make a very long story short, right before I left WWE, my father got sick. I was at WWE. I was starting to transition from a referee role to an agent role. Kind of like what the late great Dave Hebner and Timmy White did.
Right.
The transition into being an agent. So I had gone down to FCW at the time and helped them scout, referees who would come in for training sessions and stuff like that, and talent and that sort of thing. And my father got sick and diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, lung cancer. And so my mom needed help. My sister didn't live in Toronto at the time, and my brother was dealing with his wife was having some medical issues as well. So I came home and I took time off from the road, and I came home and I was off for a little while. And I got a call from the office one day, and they said, "Is there any time frame that you think you'll be coming back?" And I said, "Well, to be honest with you, I don't know, because the situation is not good here at home, and I need to be here. I'm sorry." And then they said, well, we're cutting our workforce by 10%. So what we're going to do for you is we're going to put you on hiatus and we're going to furlough you. And in 90 days, give us a call back and let us know how things are going. And if you want to come back, the door is open. But, let us know. And I said, okay. And they gave me the 90 days and they paid me for 90 days. But the day after I had that conversation with the office, my dad passed the next day. And you know how it just hit me like a ton of bricks, because for me, my dad was my hero. You know what I mean? I got to live a dream working with all these larger than life heroes on television, but my dad was my hero, So, again, I figured, I got this 90 days. I'm going to take full advantage of all of it. I don't care. I need to be here. I just need to get my head straight, everything. And at the end of the 90 days, I didn't call him back. I just didn't. I had that conversation. Then they called it and we talked, and it was just like, I just need to be home. Between my family, my wife, and everybody who had to sacrifice all that time. They say we make the sacrifices being on the road 250, 300 days a year, but they forget the real people who make the sacrifice are the people you leave at home that you miss all the birthdays, you miss all the holidays, you miss all the. So you know what? I figured it was time for me to give back to them because they allowed me to live my dream. They were nice enough to not allowed me, but they were patient enough to let me live my dream, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, in the tenure that you worked as a referee, what is your all-time favorite match that you got to ref?
I had a ton of them, but it doesn't get bigger than getting to referee a main event at WrestleMania. And between Edge and Undertaker at 24. And the fact that I wasn't originally scheduled for that match, and Edge and Taker requested me for that match, which was a big, a huge honor for me. Because about a week before WrestleMania 24, Edge came up to me in the locker room and just said, hey, Jimmy, can I talk to you for a second? I said, yeah, man, what's up? He says, Taker and I want you to ref our match at WrestleMania. I said, really? I said, that's cool, but I'm not scheduled to have your match. He says, oh, don't worry, we can get it done. We'll get it done. I'm like, yeah, I guess you guys have some stroke. You know what I mean? So, and they got it done, and it was cool. And at the same time, I was very nervous because, like I said, it was main event, scheduled to be the main event at WrestleMania. And I just wanted to, make sure I didn't screw it up for them.
I mean, it's probably another side to highlight to that is that's a hometown boy you get to ref as well, and seeing his craft. Mm-hmm. I mean, I idolized Edge a lot growing up. I actually was lucky enough to have met his mother. Mm-hmm. She's a family friend of my aunt's, and she was a wonderful lady. And I remember meeting her in passing one day. I've never met Adam personally. Mm-hmm. One day I do hope to. But there was a situation. I remember when she'd passed, and him and Jason were up here, and there was people like hovering around the funeral home waiting for them just to get autographs. And I felt that was the most disgusting thing that you could do as a human being.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think he ever did. I don't think either of them or even Beth signed anything, thankfully. Mm-hmm. But I remember hearing the stories. I don't know the 100% truth to that. This is just what I've heard because of like the area that I was in. Mm-hmm. So, and you talked about your dad passing in 09, 10 there. I lost my dad in 06, January of 06, just a few months after the Eddie's passing.
Wow.
I was 14 at the time. So it was like, I just heard Eddie had passed, and I was just getting back into wrestling then. Mm-hmm. And then Eddie passed, and then my dad passed, and I was like, holy crap, death is hitting me hard fast.
Right.
But speaking of Eddie, I got to bring that up because he's a legend, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rightfully so. He's done a lot. What was your relationship with Eddie?
Oh, I would consider him one of my good friends. Like, you make a lot of friends in the wrestling business. Eddie was one of the really good friends that I had. And Eddie was one of the guys who helped me come out of my shell from a speaking up and giving ideas. Like I would sit in a room and I got to work a lot of matches with Eddie, and Eddie would go over the match with whoever he was working with that night. I remember one night in particular, he was just like, he was going over, and he used to do that deal with the chair.
Yeah.
Where he'd pass it to the other, he'd make the noise after a ref bump or whatever distraction and pass it. So he's talking over and he's saying, I think it was with Matt Hardy, or it could have been Kurt. Either way, yeah. So they're going over the match, and Eddie says, "Got to do something different with that chair because I've done it too many times. I just don't want to do the same thing over and over again." And something popped in my head. I had an idea, and he looks over at me and he goes, "What?" I said, "What? What do you mean what?" He says, "What?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "I know that look." He says, "I know that look. You got something." I said, "Yeah, something popped into my head." Well, he says, "What do you got?" I said, "Well, here's what I'm thinking." I said, "Okay, you do the chair deal. You throw him the chair. What if he was to throw it back and you guys kind of play ping pong back and forth with it until the referee turns around? Whoever you want getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar." He goes, "I like it. We're doing it tonight." And then he took me aside later and he goes, "If you got ideas, I know you got ideas. Sometimes everybody does. They pop up. Don't be afraid to express your ideas. You just don't come off sounding like a smartass." Just say, "Hey guys, I got an idea if you don't mind hearing it." Yeah.
I remember this particular promo, and it sticks out, and it holds the test of time considering everything he'd been through. His promo with Brock Lesnar, leading up to their championship bout. I mean, that was so real, and like that's crazy to see. And like anybody I've spoken to that has had or come in contact with Eddie has always said positive things. I mean, even at his lowest, apparently he was still a great guy.
Yeah. It just unfortunately he had that a substance abuse problem, which unfortunately it didn't affect his in-ring work. It's just that it was outside the ring, unfortunately. But Eddie is one guy that when you talk about some of the greatest workers of all time, doesn't get mentioned enough. Definitely doesn't get mentioned enough.
He doesn't get the credit he deserves most of the times. Unfortunately, opinion based, obviously. A couple of his children now being outlandish with statements and stuff are to be expected, I guess, in the world we live in, and unfortunately the name attached to it.
Right.
I just hope it doesn't. But I mean, Vicky herself hasn't necessarily been the greatest with that legacy either, and that's just my opinion. Mm-hmm. But again, it's all personal based.
Right.
Another hard subject I want to bring up because I feel like this really messed and fucked with the locker room. Chris Benoit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if you believe in conspiracy theories or not when it comes to this matter. But what was, I guess, the easiest way to ask, the 2 weeks leading up to the event that happened with him and aftermath, what was that like?
To be honest with you, people talk about the 2 weeks leading up to it. I didn't really see anything different. Like Chris was in that group that came over from WCW, the Radicals, and Chris was with Eddie a lot. They were just, best friends. And so I got along with Chris very well. He was also someone I'd consider a friend. So for me, I didn't see any signs of anything out of the ordinary. And then once that news hit, like at first, when we first heard the news, obviously didn't know the exact details behind it. So everybody was shocked and like, everybody was like, what is going on here? What the hell is going on here? I'll say it. What the fuck is going on here? But nobody understood it, and everybody was in shambles. And we had that tribute show to him, and they were planning it. Sorry, they were planning the tribute show, and everybody said, okay. Then they had to pull it off the table because of what they found. I don't remember if they actually did one or not. Like,
yeah, the Raw was the tribute show. I remember that, and then I think everything was like quickly changed.
Yeah, because nobody knew the circumstances around everything, and then all of a sudden it was like, man, I don't see this. How did this happen? The only thing I will say about changing Chris is you saw a change in him after Eddie passed, and not something that you could say would specifically lead to something this drastic. But he just wasn't the same Eddie without Chris. He wasn't the same Chris without Eddie, if you know
Right.
what I mean. So because they were best buds.
I mean, the conspiracy theories behind Chris's death, I'll say,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot. And I mean, you believe it or you don't. I mean, it's exactly what it is a theory
Mm-hmm.
because nothing has ever been proven exactly yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we'll ever get the full answers. The
Right.
one thing I do feel that needs to be acknowledged is, for one, Nancy deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, but I understand that they won't because that brings up something they don't want.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I believe his oldest son is David. Is that his name? Is
I
David?
believe so. Yes, I
Yeah,
believe so.
they need to let him do what he wants to do and not attach his father's legacy to him.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's severely unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. And like again, surrounding those circumstances, there's theories out there all over the place. I mean, my understanding is that um, they did um, they did some autopsy work on his brain, and they said that his brain was that of an 80-year-old with dementia. And I'm thinking, like, is it head trauma? Is it something that we don't know about? People were talking maybe it was steroids, maybe it was whatever. If that was the case, could that have contributed to it? You can't definitively say that that was the cause.
Right.
Whatever it was, if it was, like murder suicide, like they're saying, you can't say what caused him to snap that day if that's the case.
I mean, I'll tell you what my theory is off because that's a subject I don't try to bring up on here.
Mhm.
Ooh, okay. So switching out of topic here, you're retired now. You've written a book.
Mhm.
You're running, which did great from everything that I've heard. You were on a television show up here in Canada on the network, The Score, which is now Sportsnet.
Mhm.
What was that like? Transitioning to like I guess, a commentator, analyst.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, analyst is, I guess, the proper term for it. I'm not a journalist. For all you people out there, I'm not a journalist. I don't do the news or anything like that. I just give opinions. But when it was at the Score, when the Score had WWE's rights to air their programming here in Canada, Ardo Cal and I became good friends, and he says, well, you know what? I do a show after Raw on the Score. They had a serious radio show after Raw called Right After Wrestling. He says, if you're not busy, do you want to come in and like sit in with me and we talk what happened on Raw and kind of do a post show? I said, sure. And then from there, it morphed into a TV show. But the TV show, because at the time they had Mauro Ranallo there, they had Renee Paquette, they had Arda, who was the originator of the show. It was his concept, his idea. And they also had people like Cam Stewart and guys like that. So they used them on the show originally. And Arda finally said to them, he says, you got Jimmy over here. He was actually with WWE. Why don't we bring him on the show and actually, you know? So they finally said, okay, we'll have him as the fill-in guy. And then eventually it became the regular. I became a regular. And even when it shifted over to Sportsnet, you know, we went on from until about 2009 when COVID hit. The unfortunate thing is when COVID hit, they shut down the studios. So they tried to do it like we're doing it right now. But then they said for television, it doesn't work if it, for whatever reason. So it says, we're going to put you guys on hiatus. And once these studios open up again, we'll bring you back. And the studios opened up after COVID and they didn't bring us back. So unfortunately, the show went away.
I mean, to be fair, Bell Media just sucks in general. I
Mm.
stand by that.
Yeah.
I have to ask because, like, this man was a bigger part in the late '90s, early 2000s. But what's your takes on Michael Landsberg working with WWE guys?
No, he did. He was fine because he did his role as a journalist, but he wasn't really to my knowledge, at least. I didn't know him very well. He didn't seem like he was a wrestling fan. I think he was like a casual.
Right.
So maybe that's why it almost felt weird having him interview the guys, because they were pretty much in character, and I don't know how much people wanted to see them. It started to transition now where fans didn't want to see the character on TV anymore, outside of a ring and outside of
Right.
the WWE programming. They want to see them. Okay, if you're going to interview them, stop asking them about storylines, and they talk about their opponents at the next thing. Let's and he tried to do that, but it was almost reluctant by the boys, I think, sometimes to do that.
The reason I ask is this actually came across my YouTube not too long ago. Landsberg and CM Punk, and those two did not like each other from just watching that. I don't know if
Right.
that was a work or a shoot, but it was not good to watch.
No, well, Punk is the kind of guy that'll speak his mind, and when he was younger, he ruffled feathers and didn't care. And even today, when you watch stuff like when he did the Ariel Helwani interview, but even in that one, he spoke his truth, what he believed, but it was in a way where it was like he was at peace with it, as opposed to back then with Landsberg, he was more antagonistic.
Mm.
Whereas today, now when he talks about stuff like that, it's more like, yeah, that's the way it was. It was almost matter of factly,
Right. So I gotta ask, because we're talking about Punk now, and I know that I believe you talked about this as well, but it was on Hawani, and then AEW decided to release the footage.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like that was a smart business move?
To be honest with you, I said it before they aired it, because they teased that they were going to air the footage. I was saying, this isn't a good move. No, there's no gain from this. What did they gain from this? They gained absolutely nothing. It made them look petty. It made it, at least if you were going to do it, they had the young bucks sitting in front of a monitor. Make it look elaborate, at least. Put them in like they're inside the TV truck or something like that, and we're going to show this footage or whatever. But that being said, what was proved in the footage? They were out to prove something, but what was proved in the footage? Absolutely nothing, because there was
I
no
feel like
audio. There's no audio,
no.
so there's no context to the confrontation.
No, and the two things that I learned from it is, one, that was like their peak momentum, and then they started declining since.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Tony Khan saying he feared for his life, and not seeing anything in there that makes you fear for your life is crazy.
Oh boy, I think fearing for his life was a little bit of a stretch. Let's put it that way. And it wasn't much of a brawl, really. It was like 4 seconds of Jack Perry being in a rear naked choke, and Samoa Joe scooped him away like a child, and that was it.
Yeah, that's literally all that happened. I mean, it made Jack a little bit of a bigger star, and it made CM Punk come back to WWE. So, I mean,
yeah,
it is what it is. Speaking of AEW, one more topic I want to cover with AEW, and that Cody Rhodes coming back to WWE, because you obviously knew him from time.
Yeah.
How did you feel personally, and do you think it was the right call for Cody business wise?
I think it was right for him, because Cody, in starting AEW, Cody had a vision. Cody was very smart, because he sat under the learning tree of Dusty, so he knows his stuff. He knows how to tell stories. He knows how to book. He knows all that sort of thing. And contrary to popular opinion today from Ricochet, Cody was one of the guys who there would be no AEW without. For whatever reasons, I'm going to speculate here that his vision was not being seen in AEW. His for the future, the direction he wanted the company to go in, and figured, you know what, it's time for me to go, and time for me to go elsewhere. He mended fences, if there were any fences to be mended with WWE. He went there, and somebody there recognized the fact that this guy could be a huge superstar. That he had that something about him. I guess in Seinfeld world, he had the Kavorka. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. So him going back and then utilizing him the way they did, and presenting him in the manner that they did, You can't say anything negatively about it. It was the right call, the right time, the right move for him. People bought in, and same for Punk. Punk has always been someone who spoke his mind, did what he wanted to do, and did what he thought was right for him. And that's exactly what he did with that the Brawl Out press conference. That's what he did when he went there with Hawani. He just speaks his mind. That's the kind of guy he is.
That's fair. And you touched on a point that you see that Cody's vision might not have been met. And I think we're also seeing that with minus the diverticulitis, but I think Kenny Omega is in the same boat where his vision of AEW is not being brought to life either.
Which is surprising because you got somebody like a Kenny Omega, and it looks like, thank God, he's going to make his return to the ring.
Right.
But he's making his return in Japan for New Japan Pro Wrestling, which to me, I get it. He has roots there. It means a lot to him, but at the same time, he's an executive vice president of a company that's struggling right now, struggling from a point of putting asses in seats and ratings. And as much as people are going to argue about, well, ratings don't mean as much as what they used to, it's still the biggest barometer they have for advertisers and television. And yes, they got their new television deal, which is cool. Good for them.
Right.
But they can't rely on that because that money, I don't know if that offsets all the expenses that they have. Somebody told me that they have right around 200 talents on the talent roster that they're paying guaranteed contracts. That's not including referees. That's not including all the cameramen, all the backstage people, all the, you know what I mean? All the creative people.
That sounds like Eric Bischoff 2.0.
I know. But the thing is, we don't know if they're turning a profit because they're not a publicly traded company. So their numbers are not out there. Whereas someone like a WWE, which is a publicly traded company, their numbers are transparent. If someone really wants to dig, ask Brandon Thurston, you can find him.
Fair. Given that you worked with Vince from the 80s on, and as most recently, these allegations have all come to light and stuff like that, how do you feel from the moment you started working with Vince to what you found out about Vince? Were there signs that you may have seen? I mean, you don't have to disclose, but like, is there things that you picked up on the way that would make you be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense?
Well, like, for example, watching the Netflix documentary, nothing shocked me because all that stuff was already out there. As far as witnessing anything, I didn't witness anything because I had a working relationship with Vince McMahon. He was my boss. That was it. I saw him on TV days and pay-per-views, and that was it. And just, talk to him about what he needed me to do. And when he gave me shit for something, that was it, on with my day. That was it. But the good thing about it was I was on the crew as well, the ring crew and that stuff. So I was busy all day.
Right.
I didn't sit in on the meetings. I didn't get to see all the shenanigans going on backstage. I was busy all day. So I guess in a way that's good.
Yeah. No, that's
plausible deniability.
Correct. Yes.
But the thing is, with all these new allegations that are coming out now, and people are saying, what do you think of those? Do you think it's true? I said, I always say this, I don't know. I hope it's not true, but It doesn't make me angry or anything. It makes me sad because, to be honest with you, that's not the guy I saw. And if it's true, let justice be served. You know what I'm saying? I can't judge someone for something that is, at this time, an accusation.
Exactly. Like, nothing is proven yet. I mean, everything it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you yourself being a company man, and arguably the biggest name in the company, John Cena, faced backlash for him supporting Vince. But like you just said, you met one guy. You don't know what happens behind a closed door.
Right.
And it's hard to dictate that. And I think that's the same with Cena, is he's not openly saying, well, no, fuck him. He's saying, well, I don't know.
Right. Exactly. And people are saying, okay, well, how can you support a company like that? And I'm saying, I'm not supporting anything. What does today's WWE minus Vince McMahon have to do with all that stuff? everybody's still trying to connect the dots there. And
Yeah,
I
too
think
much of that.
that's, yeah, I don't understand why you're trying to connect those dots. And all these people that come out here on social media and stuff, you backing all these racists and sex traffickers and all this. I said, pardon me? You know, like what? You think I back at all this kind of activity?
Yeah, you
No.
got black books, you're just filling them out behind the scenes
Yeah.
with them.
Oh, some people need to chill.
Speaking of the IWC,
wait, sorry, go out and touch some grass and breathe some fresh air.
well, that's where I was kind of going. Speaking of the IWC, I mean, you're heavily active on X or Twitter, however you want to call it.
I still call it Twitter.
I do too, because that's what it is. I see you on Facebook making posts too here and there, but like you're active on Twitter because you deal with the amount of the IWC. In the last 20 years, because I think that's mainly where social media sits in the last 20 years, you've probably dealt with a fair amount of trolls, but like why do you just get like pure entertainment out of this? Like I gotta know.
No, it's me entertaining myself. You know what? I sit there and I read some of this stuff and I go, okay, yeah. Oh, here's one. I'm gonna have some fun.
Fair enough.
That's all it is.
Do you have any like messages like that you personally just want to say but you don't because you're not trying to get canceled in this day and age?
Well, I get smarmy, I get snarky. I throw a few jabs here and there, but
I just find it hilarious when I read it, and every time I see a lot of your tweets, I'm just like, oh man, this why start this? Like,
and I know it's going to come just because, God forbid, I say anything that critiques AEW. I know it's coming. And the funny thing is, I'll say something online that critiques WWE, something I see in WWE, and it's crickets. It's like the cone of silence from Get Smart. There's a reference that people won't get, but anyway.
I get that too. I'll make a comment about AEW and then I have people shitting on me, and then I'll say something about WWE and they forget that I said something negative about WWE. Right. Like, it's crazy. I want to ask this because like you weren't I don't know if he was around when you were, but I know you've been involved with the company still up till my idol, Wyndham Rotunda, aka Bray Wyatt. Would you have any interactions with him and positive stories with him?
No, I didn't get to work with him, but I got to meet him. Really good guy, not a whole lot of interaction with him, but when I did get back to visit when they were in town and when they were in the area, always, whenever I ran into him, always a pleasant guy. I find it amazing because I hadn't been with the company for a while and he knew who I was. And I'm like, okay, this is cool shit.
But you had worked with his dad too, hadn't you?
Oh, I did. I did work with his dad.
Yeah. It's very unfortunate, the circumstances in life. So how do you go from doing your television show with the score to now reffing it rant, reffing it up on the huge pop radio? How do you get there?
It's funny because I started doing some stuff with Wrestling Inc. I was doing some post shows with them, and then a few years ago, more than a few years ago now, I can't believe it's been as long as it's been. My wife suggested me doing some kind of video for online for all the social media platforms. Just put a video out there and stuff like that. I said, I'm not putting a big long video out there for it. And she's like, well, just go out there and rant for a minute. And she said, rant. I said, rant. Yeah, just go. And she goes, what? I said, Ref and Rant would be kind of a cool name for it. There you go. So she said she records them all for me. She sits back with my phone and she records them, so I don't have to stand there look like I'm taking a selfie and stuff like that. And since then, it's like, okay, I'll do it from Monday to Friday. Have a little fun with that. See what kind of response I'll get for those, and have a little fun with that as well. And then Brian Hempner was doing his podcast called Reffing It Up, and he said, do you want to join the crew and just be like on the podcast? I said, yeah, absolutely. And then just recently, not too long ago, someone who people in Ontario might be familiar with, Donnie De Silva, who used to be a promoter and work with talent and stuff like that up here in Ontario, and promoted shows and stuff like that. One of the few guys, if ever, to promote indie shows with Hulk Hogan. I mean, he had a tour with Hogan a while back.
That's cool.
He said that they're looking for a radio show for TSN in Montreal, TSN 690, and it'll be on iHeartRadio and all that stuff. And looking for a name for it, they came up with Huge Pop, and he said, and are you on board? I said, yeah, absolutely. Sounds good. And still going. You know what I mean? I get
History,
to talk,
as they say.
yeah, I get to talk wrestling, which is, a passion of mine, and continue to do it, which is fun.
Now, before we start wrapping up, there's a few questions I want to ask you. This
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily involve you being in the ring.
Okay.
What is your greatest of all time match?
Oh, see, that's a tough one because now I gotta think. The greatest all-time match for me, I know there's a ton out there, and it's very subjective, but I will go with, you know what? I know it sounds like a cop-out answer, but I'm gonna go with Steamboat Savage from WrestleMania 3 because
Timeless.
it's one of those matches that you could talk about WrestleManias and stuff like that, and everybody can go, I remember this moment from this WrestleMania. Like we mentioned WrestleMania 18, and they talk about Rock and Hogan in that moment they had in the ring and that match they had, and the place was just nobody sat down the entire match. And then you ask people, do you remember what the main event was? And they automatically assume that was the main event.
That main event was Triple H and Jericho, wasn't it? For
Right.
the then Undisputed Championship.
Right. And people forget that.
I forget that.
Yeah, there you go. See, so even though you had Andre Hogan in the Silverdome, what match do people constantly talk about? Steamboat Savage for the Intercontinental Championship.
Yeah, that's a timeless classic. I mean, even with people, I mean, the younger generation, maybe if they go back and watch, if they have the means to do so, they will. But
there's
yeah,
one
that's
too that I'm
definitely
gonna. There's one I
timeless
got to
one.
throw. Yeah, there's one I got to throw in there. It was the opening match at WrestleMania one year. Was Owen and Brett.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I love that match. Like I can go back and watch that all the time. Never get tired of it.
So, are you on board with Randy Orton when you say there's not a greatest of all time, or do you believe there is a greatest of all time?
I don't see. Again, that's a tough one to say. Who's the greatest of all time? Like if you're talking about current right now, and this gets a lot of heat when I say it. Currently, right now, I think Randy Orton. You mentioned Randy Orton is the most complete wrestler out there.
Right.
And then when people say who is the best worker out there, that's a different story. Because
So
there's
it's
a
just
lot of
subjective.
there's a lot of good. There's people will say, well, so and so is the best wrestler, but he may not be the best worker.
Fair.
Because the best workers are the guys who get an audience to respond to everything they do, not just their moves. Whether they take the microphone, whether they give a look, and it's as simple as that. And whether they pass the airport test, as they say, and people buy into everything they do, as opposed to someone. With all due respect to Will Ospreay, I think he's a very talented dude. He just needs to learn to tell better in-ring stories and learn how to tone down the great stuff that he does and insert those in proper moments in the match where he can maximize those moments, as opposed to just going balls to the walls and just get them all in. He's starting to do that now. He's starting to get it. People say, what was his best match in AEW since he's been there? Watch the one with him and Bryan Danielson. Because with him, Danielson had him slow down and sell and take his time. Anyway.
Yeah.
I can go on for days.
I mean, I'm here for it. Now I'm going to ask you a question. It's a two-part kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Give me your Mount Rushmore of all time, and then your Mount Rushmore of current.
Oh boy, Mount Rushmore of all time. Okay, I'm going to go again. I'm going to get heat for all of this, but it doesn't matter. I don't care. I'm a heat magnet. Shawn Michaels. I'm going to go with. Got to put Flair on there because he just belongs on every Mount Rushmore.
And Space Mountain.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And this is going to get a weird reaction. The reason I'm going to put him on there is because he took a gimmick that people today would say it's unbelievable and made it believable. The Undertaker, because that dead man gimmick, in all fairness, should have be an eye roller. People going,
should have been a dead man.
Yeah, everybody should have gone, oh, you got to be kidding me. They're doing but he made it work. He absolutely made it work. And if you're talking
I think Paul Bearer helped with that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And man, who's the fourth? Only because he's still active. I'm not going to put Randy on there because he's still active. I'm going to wait till he calls it a day, and then I could put him on the mount. We'll carve out the other one face and put his on.
That's fair.
The fourth one, if you're talking strictly from a money drawing standpoint, you got to put Steve on there, Stone Cold.
That's a solid one, Craig, actually. Now your current, who would you put there?
Well,
obviously Randy's one. You just said Randy.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer for me. Randy is one. I'm going to put AJ Styles on there, even though he's on the hurt, the injured list.
That's unfortunate too. Like he just got back.
Yeah, I know, and he's probably thinking of winding it down. But still, again, from a work standpoint, people are going to say, "Oh, you freaking shill, Homer." I'm going to put Roman Reigns on there because, man. You talk about a guy who maximizes everything he does in the ring, maximizes all the time. Anytime he's in there, it's Roman. And I know people are going to say, well, why don't you pick somebody from Japan? Guess what? I don't watch enough Japan wrestling to make a fair judgment on any of them. And if I had to pick a fourth current, again, going off the board, I'm going to go Nick Nemeth.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Definitely underrated.
Yeah. Underrated, underappreciated, under everything.
The biggest highlight, we did a career retrospective here on the network not too long ago of Dolph at the time. Mm-hmm. Him and Alberto, that double heel or the double flip in one night, the double turn.
Yeah.
It's not very often you see that, but like it worked.
It's not very often you see it work, and that's like you. Yeah, no, that was amazing.
You had mentioned the Undertaker and how that gimmick doesn't work in today's wrestling. I would argue that Bray became close.
Yeah.
And do you believe that in-ring segment from Raw 30, I think it was, that it was them passing the torch to one another?
I believe so. I think the dead man recognized what they had in Bray Wyatt and his creativity, and this was kind of like okay, it's your turn to take that torch and run with it.
Fair. Now I know you probably get asked this a lot. Were you on the plane ride to hell, or from hell? Excuse me.
Yep.
Do you have any stories that haven't been heard, or maybe you want from your perspective?
There's not much I can add to what's already out there, other than the fact that on this charter plane there was a table on the plane with it was a 4-seater with a table in the middle, and myself, Coach Michael Cole, and I want to say it was Chimmel, if I'm not mistaken. We were playing cards. There used to be it was a game of Trump that they used to call Beale Street because Dutch Mantell is the one who introduced this, and Jerry Lawler introduced it to our locker room. So after Memphis, Beale Street. And as we're playing cards there, we hear some rustling in the aisleway, and we turn around, and there's Kurt Hennig and Brock Lesnar jockeying for position on one another. And people forget, Brock's a big dude, but they forgot how big Kurt was. Kurt was a big dude too. So we're sitting right across from the emergency exit door, and wham, they slam right into it. And we just, everybody just took a deep breath and held their breath and cranking the seatbelt a little tighter just in case. Then finally, some of the guys got up. Okay, guys, break it up, take it easy, and stuff like that. But that's when I realized, you know what? I'm not even going to get up and go to the bathroom. I'm sitting right in my seat, and I'm not having. I don't care what happens behind me here. We're going to play cards all night.
Fair. One last question, and then we'll wrap it up here.
Cool.
Anytime were you involved in Wrestle Court?
No, I was only never a participant. Always just in the gallery watching.
Is it as like, I know some superstars and wrestlers have said that it can be brutal at times. Is that true? Is it all what it cracked up to be, or is it just a way to settle an argument between the boys?
Nah, you know what it was? It was more of they always happened on overseas trips, because that's where the guys were able to get together and have fun. It was more kind of okay, guys, let's have a little bit of fun here. Somebody would do something stupid, and it was like, okay, you're going to wrestler's court, and they'd bring them to court, and JBL would be the prosecuting attorney, and somebody else would be the defense attorney, and and usually they were found guilty, and their penance was they had to buy the judge a bottle of Jack Daniels. That was the penance. I mean, like, it was just
kind of like a rib.
Yeah, but it was just a goof to entertain the boys. That's all it was. And some people took it a little too much to heart, but I guess they didn't see the humor in it.
Hey, that's fair. I had a question on the tip of my tongue. You don't have to speak on this because I know it's a touchy subject at times with pretty much anybody I've spoken to in a locker room. Particularly JBL being a bully and Chris Benoit being a bully backstage. Is that any relevance to that, or nothing that you've actually seen?
I wouldn't say bully. Like back in those days, every locker room had what they called a policeman. He was the guy that if someone broke etiquette, because there was a locker room etiquette and there was a way you conducted yourself around everybody, they would hear it from those guys. But as far as, I didn't witness any overt bullying per se. I mean, I did witness the incident with The Miz when he got banished from the locker room, but that whole story, I told it recently on Huge Pop, was basically Miz was in the locker room. He'd just come off on the road with us from the Tough Enough thing, and he was eating chicken over a bag, and I'm walking in the locker room with Scott Armstrong, and Scott stops and he goes, "Hey, Miz, when you're done with that chicken, why don't you take the bones and just stuff them in there in the bag way down deep in there?" And Miz just laughed and kept eating his chicken. And Scott says, "I'm going to kill him." And I go, "Scott, what's going on?" I corral Scott because he says, "That's my bag. He's eating over my bag, getting crumbs all over in my bag." I said, "Oh, shit, here we go." I said, "Scott, you know what's going to happen? If you go over and beat the crap out of him, you're going to get in trouble, not him. So take it easy." And then, of course, William Regal walks over with that coming, "Scott, what's wrong? I'll take care of it. Don't worry." And then Chris got wind of it, and it was like, okay, here we go. He went in the locker room. He says, Miz, where's your bag?" He says, "Right here." Chris grabs his bag. He says, "Follow me." He takes it over, throws his bag in a broom closet, and says, tells Miz, you change in that broom closet until we allow you back in the dressing room." So I don't know. I don't remember how long it was, but it was for a little while. He had to change in the broom closet.
It's crazy. But that's some stories. What is the nicest change you've seen under the newest regime?
I think the biggest change I've seen is how relaxed everybody is. You can see it when I was backstage not too long ago visiting friends. You can see that everybody's smiling. Everybody's in a good mood. Whereas before, it wasn't that nobody was in a good mood. It was kind of like everybody was a little bit on pins and needles because they mind their P's and Q's a little bit more. Here, there was a little more freedom. Guys were a little more chumming around. They have a little more input. Everything's not as regimented. I don't believe that they are as scripted as they were under the old regime. Guys are given a little more freedom and some latitude to play with their characters and try and experiment with what works and what doesn't work. But at the end of the day, like I said, the biggest change is you just feel the atmosphere. It's night and day.
That's solid to hear, especially all of the horror stories we've heard over the years as a fan standpoint. Was Paul always primed to take this position, or you think this has just become more into the recent years?
I think I don't know if he was primed from day one to take over that position, but he proved that over time that yeah, he's the right one. He's the guy that should be taking over. He was always intelligent when it came to the business, and even back in the day when with the click, when he was the guy that had to eat shit when everybody else was getting away with everything. I think we all know where that's going, but
yeah, he took his lumps for the boys on that one.
Yeah, yep.
What was the locker room like when it actually eventually came out that Paul was dating Stephanie?
I think, well, you know how it is. Some guys are for lack of a better term, we're like, oh yeah, here he goes. He's dating the boss's daughter and stuff like that. But you know what? It was, I didn't really think much of it, and I didn't really listen to any of the comments made. So, like again, it was one of those deals where, if I did hear anything, it was like in this ear, out the other one. I just didn't pay attention to it. I thought, hey, good for them.
Fair enough. Last question, and then I'm going to wrap it up. What is your take on the wrestlers in different promotions taking shots at their old company?
I get it. I get they're trying to pump up the company they're working for. It depends on the context of it. If they go out of their way to take shots at the other company, then I'm not for that. But if they're asked a question and they answer it legitimately in a way, because again, it sounds like I'm siding with CM Punk, but I'm not. The Ariel Helwani interview was not him bashing on AEW. He was asked a question. He was asked a few questions actually by Ariel, and he answered those questions. So it's not like he went out of his way, wasn't asked about the company. I'm sure that if he didn't bring it up, it wouldn't have been Punk wouldn't have brought it up either. But if people go out of their way to bash the other company without it being asked, then yeah, I say what? There's no need for that.
So because you touched on the Punk, but what about the Will Ospreay and Paul Levesque shooting at each other? What was your take on that? Was that just something taken out of context, or because I mean it was plain as day what Paul said? So,
well, the people are assuming that it was plain as day. Obviously, Will assumed it was a shot at him, and okay, if he thought it was a shot at him, he could have taken his little shot, but I didn't think he had to go as far as he did. Talking about grinding the boss's daughter, really? Are we in high school now?
Yeah, fair enough.
That's what I thought. I thought you could have, if you wanted to make a comment about the grind, make it. I don't care. But if you're going there and now you're saying like, oh, geez, okay, what are we on Twitter having fun now?
That's fair. Predictions for Elimination Chamber that come up in about a month's time from now.
Ooh, see, that's a tough one because now I got to pick 6 guys that are going to be in it. I guess it all depends. See, that all depends on what happens at Royal Rumble. See,
that's fair.
Because
leave it at that. Do you think Cena has a big moment in Toronto before his big send off in Canada at least?
I think he needs it. Doesn't need it. I think he deserves it. I think it'll happen. Toronto's always been a big city for him, and the fact that they're doing it at the Sky Dome, I'm like you. I'm going to call it Sky Dome. I don't care what that other name is, but yeah, I think this whole thing, Cena's going to be treated like the legend he is, and he's going to have a legendary moment in Toronto for sure. I believe that.
Is Cena bigger than Hogan, Rock, Austin?
I don't know if he's bigger. See, that's as far as wrestling in the ring. Um, see, that's a tough call. That is a tough call, but see, I know I go back to Hogan only because this all doesn't happen without. I know Hogan was a part of it. Without him
Right.
and Piper, all this doesn't happen.
A lot
But
of people forget that Piper's even Canadian, which is wild to me.
I know.
Yeah. Who gets 17 first? Cena, 1 away, or
Mhm.
Randy, 2, I think 2 or 3 away? Because you know that record's going to be broken by one of those two men.
I would assume that it, being the world of WWE, a WWE talent would do that. I think Cena maybe. Why not? But then,
go ahead.
No, I'm thinking if Randy were to hold one of either the world title or the Universal title, and Cena take it off him, get Randy all hot. I don't know. There's so many scenarios, but I think Cena maybe. But I know, knowing Cena, he's probably lobbying for him not to be the guy to hit 17 out of respect to Ric Flair.
Do you last two on Cena, and then I'll let you do your promoting. Does Cena win the IC title over the next year? And who is Cena's last opponent?
Okay. So the first one is Cena with the IC title?
Yeah, because that's the one he's never won in his career.
Oh, that's right. Oh, maybe that's the way to go. Make him a Grand Slam champion. And then for his last match, I know there's a lot of young, talented guys on the roster, but there's something about his rivalry with. Should it be against Rock? No. Him and Randy would be again. But if you're picking someone who is an up and comer, you know who I think I'm high on Carmelo Hayes.
I think
yeah. I think he's there's something there with him.
Fair enough. I want to see Randy, and this is probably way out of like anything that could happen, but even Adam coming back to have one match with Cena just before he goes.
Oh, that would be cool.
Just to end off the rivalries and close that door forever.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, Jimmy, go ahead.
Unfortunately, Adam probably has some injury time tacked onto his contract. So
yeah, that's a whole other subject with AEW. But that being said, Jimmy, I appreciate this hour and a half of your time. It's been great to hear some stories. I'd love to talk to you again in the future at Elimination Chamber. I'd love to buy you a cup of coffee, as we have exchanged already.
Yeah.
Do want to plan to see you in person there, no matter what. With that being said, go ahead and promote everything you need to promote and where people can find you.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you. Like we said earlier, I'm on the Roughing It Up podcast with Brian Hepner and myself, my good brother in Stripes, and RJ. I got to give RJ a shout out because he holds that glue together. I have no idea how to do all that technical stuff, so he handles it all. And Donnie DeSilva and I do the Huge Pop Radio Show. We got great guests on every week, and we have a lot of fun doing that. Also, my Ref and Rants you can catch on all my social media platforms at Jimmy Korderas on Twitter, at Real Jimmy Korderas on Instagram, and of course, Facebook. I'm not on TikTok or anything like that, or Blue Sky or whatever yet. Anyways, you never know, I might be, but I'm just holding off for now. But that's pretty much it, and just hanging and banging and just having fun.
Awesome.
Chilling, grilling,
and even in this wet, I mean, it's cold out, but we're here.
Yeah.
We're Canadian. We get it.
Of course.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a wonderful season of Spotlight with Shadow. My guests have been phenomenal. Ending the season with Jimmy himself, a legend in the business, is an amazing opportunity that I was able to have. Thank you once again for tuning in to Spotlight with Shadow. Good night.